Fleet Commander Vorruk-Saan of the Dorvathi Interstellar Dominion had conquered 47 worlds, 47. Each one had its own little story, its own little drama, its own little moment where the locals looked up at the sky, saw the shadow of 500 warships blocking their sun, and promptly started renegotiating the terms of their existence. He had done this so many times, he had started keeping a personal tally on the inner wall of his command pod. Little scratch marks. 47 of them. Neat, tidy, almost artistic, if you tilted your head and squinted. World number 48 was called Earth. He was not worried. He should have been. The first sign that something was different came from scout pilot Drunn, a young Dorvathi with sharp yellow eyes and the unfortunate habit of narrating everything he saw out loud, like a commentator at a sporting event nobody had asked to attend. "Commander," Drunn said over the comm channel, his voice carrying that particular tone of someone who has just seen something confusing, but has not yet decided how alarmed to be. "The planet, it is very blue." Vorruk-Saan blinked all four of his eyes slowly. "Yes, Drunn. We reviewed the planetary scans. It is a water-heavy world." Right, but also green. And the green parts, they have things growing on them, tall things, like the vegetation on Merak 5, but somehow more intentional. They are called trees. They look aggressive. They are trees, Drunn. I am simply noting my observations, Commander. Vorruk-Saan rubbed the thick ridge above his forward eyes. 500 warships, 400,000 combat troops, a fleet that had made entire civilizations weep just by entering orbit, and his lead scout was being menaced by the concept of trees. The Dorvathi fleet held position at the outer edge of Earth's atmosphere, which the humans apparently called the thermosphere, a word that sounded like something you would name a kitchen appliance. Vorruk-Saan watched the readouts carefully. Primitive satellites orbited the planet, small communications arrays, a few vehicles the humans used to transport themselves through their upper sky. Nothing threatening, nothing even remotely capable of challenging a single Dorvathi patrol vessel, let alone 500 warships. The standard protocol was simple: hold position, broadcast the Dominion's subjugation signal, a 7-minute audio and visual transmission that outlined in polite but firm terms the basic structure of planetary surrender. Wait for the inevitable panicked response. Accept the keys to the kingdom, add another scratch mark to the wall. So they broadcast it. And then they waited. Drunn broke the silence after approximately 4 minutes. "Commander, I am receiving a response transmission." Already, Vorruk-Saan straightened. Most species took at least an hour to process the subjugation signal. The faster ones took 20 minutes. 4 minutes was unusual. What are they saying? There was a pause, the kind of pause that means the person pausing is choosing their words very, very carefully. "They are asking us to repeat ourselves," Drunn said. "They say the signal cut out midway through, and they missed the part where we explained our, quote, actual military capabilities. They want numbers, specific numbers, fleet tonnage, weapon yield ratings, troop count, estimated bombardment range." Vorruk-Saan stared at the comm panel for a long moment. "They want our military specifications." "Yes, Commander," before they respond to our demand for surrender. "They are framing it as due diligence." "Send them the public fleet manifest," Vorruk-Saan said, "because honestly, why not?" The numbers were staggering. Sharing them had caused 2 prior civilizations to simply surrender on the spot without any further discussion. The response came back in 11 minutes. Drunn read it aloud. His voice had developed a small, involuntary wobble. "They say, and I am quoting directly, they say, understood. Please be advised that any aggressive action toward Earth or its population will be met with full military response. We suggest a diplomatic channel be opened within 48 of your hours. If this is not possible, please indicate your preferred method of conflict, as we have several options available and would like to prepare accordingly." Silence stretched across the command deck. Sub-Commander Yelt, a heavy-set Dorvathi veteran who had been with Vorruk-Saan since the conquest of Palom III, leaned over and said, very quietly, "Did they just ask us how we want to fight?" "Apparently, like, as a courtesy." "That is one interpretation." "Commander," Yelt said, and his voice had the tone of a soldier who has just noticed something very wrong with the battlefield, "I have been reviewing their surface scans more carefully. These humans, they have an enormous number of large metal vehicles on their surface, tracked vehicles, and flying vehicles, and floating vehicles, and they appear to have small handheld devices they carry with them that project small, fast-moving pieces of metal at high velocity. Weapons? Yelt. Yes. But Commander, they are everywhere. The civilians have them. I am looking at a scan of a small rural settlement, and there are more weapons per square unit than in a standard Dorvathi military garrison. Yelt pulled up a holographic display. This one human female appears to be standing outside a structure in a remote location. She is holding two of the handheld projection devices and also has a larger version strapped across her back. She appears to be feeding an animal at the same time. Casually, she is doing what? While doing what? Feeding a large hoofed animal and holding 3 weapons simultaneously, while also, and I want to be precise here, wearing what appears to be a garment specifically designed to hold more weapons in additional pockets. The command deck was very quiet. What is the animal doing? Vorruk-Saan asked, because he genuinely could not stop himself. Drunn, who had apparently been watching the same scan, answered, "It looks content, Commander. The animal seems completely unbothered. It is eating from her hand." Vorruk-Saan had conquered 47 worlds. He had seen apex predators. He had seen species that had evolved directly from pack hunters. He had seen warriors and soldiers and mercenaries from a dozen different star systems. He had never, not once, seen a civilian creature casually draped in killing instruments while simultaneously performing a domestic chore with the calm energy of someone who found the whole situation completely, perfectly normal. He decided to call for a full intelligence review before proceeding. This was, he would later admit, the smartest decision he made during the entire operation. Intelligence Officer Preela, a thin Dorvathi with an encyclopedic memory and a deeply unfortunate tendency toward honesty, stood at the front of the command briefing room and pulled up her findings with the energy of someone delivering a medical diagnosis they personally found upsetting. "The humans," she began, "have been in a state of near constant warfare with each other for the entirety of their recorded history. Most species have conflict in their histories," Vorruk-Saan said. "Yes, but most species, at some point, stop. Humans reorganized the conflict, gave it structure. They developed entire schools of thought dedicated specifically to the practice of organized violence. They wrote books about it. Long books, detailed books. Books that other humans then read and used and improved upon over centuries, until what began as hitting each other with rocks evolved, in a remarkably short time by galactic standards, into structures designed purely to end other structures as efficiently and thoroughly as possible." How short a time? Preela checked her notes. From their first written records to their first orbital technology, approximately 5,000 of their years. For context, the Palom 3 civilization took 90,000 years to achieve the same technological progression, and they did not spend a significant portion of that time actively trying to destroy each other. Sub-Commander Yelt made a sound that was not quite a word. "There is more," Preela said, "because there was always more. Their largest historical conflicts involved dozens of nations fighting simultaneously across their entire planetary surface, with casualties numbering in the tens of millions. And yet, after each conflict, they rebuilt, faster. They took the lessons from each war, applied them to their infrastructure, their medicine, their engineering, and emerged stronger than before. It is as though their entire developmental cycle has been optimized by continuous catastrophic pressure. They got better at surviving by constantly trying to kill each other," Vorruk-Saan said flatly. "That is a blunt way of putting it, but yes, Commander. Also," she pulled up a new scan, "their military is currently on full alert. However, I want to draw your attention to a secondary data point. Their military represents only a fraction of their armed population. Under their largest nation-state's legal framework, civilians are explicitly permitted, and in some regions culturally encouraged, to maintain personal armaments. The individual we observed earlier, the female with the hoofed animal, her name according to local network records, appears to be Kira Baston. She lives alone in a rural region. She is not military. She is not law enforcement. She is, by their classification, a private citizen." Preela paused for emphasis. "She owns 14 weapons." The room was silent enough to hear the hum of the ventilation system. 14, Yelt repeated. 14. And based on what I can access from their local data networks, this is not considered unusual. It is considered a hobby. Vorruk-Saan stood up slowly. He walked to the viewport. Outside, spread below him in impossible blue and green, was Earth, peaceful looking, from up here, gorgeous even, in the unsettling way that dangerous things sometimes were gorgeous. "Open the diplomatic channel," he said. "Commander?" Drunn looked surprised. The 48-hour window they offered us. Open the channel. I want to speak with their leadership. Should I prepare the subjugation demand phrasing? Vorruk-Saan turned from the viewport. No, he said. I think we will try something different this time. He did not add the scratch mark to the wall. Not yet. Because that evening, Kira Baston, civilian, private citizen, 14-weapon hobby enthusiast from a rural patch of land on a small blue-green planet, looked up at the sky from her porch where a fleet of 500 warships sat in orbit, squinted at the faint lights hanging above the clouds, and apparently, according to Drunn's increasingly frantic surveillance report, went inside, came back out with a cup of something hot, sat back down in her chair, and continued to watch the sky, like she was waiting, like she had been waiting her whole life for something to show up that was finally worth shooting at. Vorruk-Saan stared at that image on his screen for a very long time. The diplomatic channel opened at 0300 hours, Earth time, and nobody aboard the Dorvathi fleet got any sleep before it did. The diplomatic channel opened, and the first human face Vorruk-Saan ever saw belonged to a woman named General Adaeze Okafor. She had dark brown skin, short grey-streaked hair cut close to her skull, and the kind of eyes that looked like they had personally witnessed several things they had chosen not to discuss at dinner parties. She was sitting behind a desk that was aggressively clean, not clean the way things were clean when someone tidied up before a meeting, clean the way a surgeon's table was clean, purposeful, deliberate, a workspace where clutter had been identified as the enemy and dealt with accordingly. She looked at Vorruk-Saan's 4 eyes, his grey-ridged skull, his wide flat nose, and the faintly iridescent skin that the Dorvathi considered a mark of high breeding, and she did not flinch, she did not gasp, she did not perform any of the reactions that 47 other species had performed when they first saw a Dorvathi commander on a view screen. She picked up a small ceramic cup, drank from it, set it back down and said, "You are about 40 minutes late. We expected contact 6 hours ago." Vorruk-Saan had prepared an opening statement. It was a very good opening statement. Firm, dignified, appropriately ominous. He had rehearsed it. He had revised it 3 times. It opened with the phrase, "By the authority of the Dorvathi Interstellar Dominion, you are hereby notified." He said none of it. Instead, what came out of his mouth was, "You were expecting us?" General Okafor tilted her head slightly. "Commander, you have 500 ships sitting in our thermosphere. Our tracking systems picked you up when you crossed the outer asteroid belt. That was 9 hours ago. We have had a very productive 9 hours. She set down her cup again. "I am General Adaeze Okafor, Joint Command, Earth Unified Defense. Who am I speaking with?" "I am Fleet Commander Vorruk-Saan of the Dorvathi Interstellar Dominion." "Vorruk-Saan," she repeated, pronouncing it with a precision that genuinely surprised him. "All right. Commander Vorruk-Saan, I want to be honest with you, because I think honesty saves time, and time, right now, is something neither of us has in abundance. You came here expecting a standard planetary submission. I understand that. I have read the briefings on Dorvathi expansion methodology. You are very good at what you do. 47 worlds is not an accident." Another pause. Vorruk-Saan noticed she paused the way experienced commanders paused. Not from hesitation, from intention. "But I need you to understand something before this conversation goes any further," she said. "We are not those 47 worlds." From somewhere behind Vorruk-Saan, Sub-Commander Yelt made a sound that might have been a nervous laugh suppressed just barely in time. "General Okafor," Vorruk-Saan said, gathering himself, "the Dominion does not offer terms of partnership to developing worlds. The structure of absorption is non-negotiable. However, the degree of autonomy granted post-absorption is entirely dependent on the level of cooperation demonstrated during initial contact. I would encourage you to consider—" "Commander," she interrupted, pleasantly, "I am going to stop you there. Not because I am being rude, but because I genuinely do not want you to commit to a position you will find difficult to walk back from." She folded her hands on the desk. "Let me tell you what the last 9 hours looked like from our side. Our orbital defense grid is active. Our planetary missile systems are loaded and targeted. Every nation-state on this planet, and I want to stress that we have a complicated history with each other that I will not bore you with. Every single one of them has agreed, unanimously, to treat your fleet as a shared hostile target. That has not happened in recorded human history, not once. You managed to unite us in about 4 hours. I want to give you credit for that. It is genuinely impressive." Drunn, still on comms, made a very small, very quiet noise that sounded like the beginning of an existential realization. Additionally, General Okafor continued, as though she were reading from a grocery list. We have approximately 300,000 ground-based personnel currently in active standby. We have naval assets repositioned to coastal defense positions. We have air response units at ready altitude across 6 continents. And privately, she picked up her cup again. I want you to know that our civilian population is motivated. The broadcast you sent us was picked up by our global communications network before we could gate it. Every human on this planet heard your subjugation signal. Every single one. She drank. I have received over 40 million individual messages in the last 6 hours from private citizens asking where to report for volunteer duty. The command deck of the Dorvathi flagship had, at this point, achieved a quality of silence that Vorruk-Saan had previously only encountered in deep space, in the total absence of stars. 40 million, Yelt said, under his breath, to no one. Approximately, General Okafor said, because apparently her audio pickup was very good. We stopped counting at 40 million, because the server managing the intake form had a processing issue. The actual number is likely higher. She set the cup down for the last time. Commander Vorruk-Saan, I am not telling you this to threaten you. I am telling you this because I believe you are an intelligent individual who would rather have accurate information than comfortable information. So, accurately, what would you like to do? Vorruk-Saan stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something he had not done in 47 conquests. He turned to his staff and said, "Leave the channel open, give me the room." The bridge crew filed out with remarkable speed. Yelt was last. On his way through the door, he turned back and gave Vorruk-Saan a look that communicated, without a single word, a very complete message. That message was, "I am glad this is your problem and not mine, and I will be in the corridor pretending I cannot hear anything." Alone on the command deck, Vorruk-Saan turned back to General Okafor. "Your civilian population," he said. "The individuals who are not military, the ones with the weapons. Yes? Are they genuinely prepared to engage a fleet of 500 warships?" General Okafor considered this question with what appeared to be complete sincerity. "Commander," she said, "I grew up in a country where people hunted large dangerous animals for recreation, for fun, on weekends. We called it sport. The animal in question, in some cases, weighs over a ton and can run faster than our military vehicles on certain terrain. People do this voluntarily, for enjoyment, wearing hats." She looked at him steadily. "You are asking me if those same people, told that someone has arrived to take their home, are going to consider engaging a hostile fleet?" She paused. The question answers itself. It did, in fact, answer itself. Vorruk-Saan rubbed the ridge above his eyes. This was becoming a headache. A significant headache. The kind of headache that arrived when a situation that was supposed to be simple had revealed itself layer by layer to be almost impressively complicated. "I want to consult with my staff," he said. "Of course. Take your time. We will be here." He cut the channel. He stood alone on the command deck. He looked out at the blue-green planet below. Then, because he was, above all things, a commander who had lived to conquer 47 worlds by knowing when to reassess, he reopened the internal comm. "Preela," he said, "I need everything you have on their military history, not summaries, everything. I need it in 20 minutes. Preela's voice came back immediately, because Preela was, if nothing else, always prepared. "I anticipated this request, Commander. I have been compiling since we entered orbit, sending to your personal display now." A brief pause. "Commander, I should warn you, some of it is a lot." "Define a lot." "I found a period in their history they call the Second World War. It lasted approximately 6 years. The combined casualties numbered somewhere between 70 and 85 million. They then spent the following decade rebuilding, developed orbital technology, and began competing with each other to reach other celestial bodies, for sport." Another pause. "I found records of something they call a Cold War, which was a decades-long period of mutual military posturing between two of their largest nation-states. During this time, both sides developed enough explosive ordnance to destroy their planet multiple times over. Not once, multiple times. They built more than they needed to end themselves, and then they kept building." Her voice had taken on a quality that Vorruk-Saan could only describe as haunted. "Commander, they did not destroy themselves. They reached an informal agreement to simply not use the weapons, but they kept them. They still have them. Pointed at each other, and now apparently pointed at us." Vorruk-Saan sat down in his command chair. He had been standing for a very long time. Pull up the scan of the civilian woman, he said quietly. The one with the animal. The image appeared. Kira Baston, still on her porch, though it was night now on her part of the planet. The thermal scan showed her clearly. She had added a blanket. She still had the weapons. She had not gone inside. She was still watching the sky. Vorruk-Saan thought about 47 worlds. He thought about scratch marks on a wall. He thought about civilizations that had looked up at his fleet and felt the particular specific terror that came from suddenly understanding how very small they were. He thought about how much of his career had been built on that moment, that single moment of clarity that every species had. Eventually, when they looked at the Dorvathi fleet and understood that the math did not work in their favor. Kira Baston had looked up at 500 warships. She had gone inside. She had come back out with a hot drink. She was sitting in the dark, under the glow of his fleet, wrapped in a blanket, and she looked from every angle the thermal scan could offer, like a person who had gotten comfortable. He opened the channel back to General Okafor. She was still there, still behind her clean desk. She had, he noticed, not moved particularly much in the 27 minutes the channel had been closed. She had the composure of someone who had long ago made peace with the idea of sitting still in difficult situations. "General," he said. "Commander, I would like to propose a formal diplomatic meeting, neutral format, information exchange only, no preconditions." General Okafor looked at him for a moment. Then something changed in her expression. It was not quite a smile. It was the particular look of a very experienced person who has just watched something arrive at a conclusion they had been quietly expecting all along. "That is an agreeable proposal," she said. "We can have a shuttle prepared within the hour. I will come personally." One eyebrow went up. "That is an unusual gesture for a conquering fleet commander." "I am," Vorruk-Saan said carefully, beginning to suspect that unusual gestures may be the appropriate currency for this particular situation. This time she did smile. It was a small smile, brief but genuine. "I will have coffee waiting," she said. "It is something we drink. You may find it aggressive. Most first-timers do." She cut the channel. Vorruk-Saan sat in the quiet of his command deck, in orbit above a planet he had arrived to conquer, and thought about a woman in a blanket on a porch, watching the sky without fear, patient as a planet itself, waiting. He did not add a scratch mark to the wall. He picked up his command coat. He walked to the door. He opened it. Yelt was indeed in the corridor, pretending aggressively to be interested in a wall panel. "Yelt," Vorruk-Saan said. "Commander, tell Drunn to stop watching the woman with the animal. He says she has not moved." "I know. He says she is still looking up." "I know that too." Yelt was quiet for a moment. Then, in the careful voice of a veteran soldier choosing words the way you chose footing on uncertain ground, he said, "Are we going to be all right, Commander?" Vorruk-Saan considered the question honestly. "I think," he said, "that depends entirely on whether we are smarter than the last 47. He walked toward the Shuttle Bay. Behind him, 500 warships held position in silence above a blue-green world that had not even for a single moment, looked afraid. Below, on a porch in the dark, Kira Baston finished her drink, set the cup down beside her chair, and kept watching the sky, just in case.